Welcome to episode 121 of the Half Point Per Podcast. I am your host, Evan Riggs, joined as always by our producer, Johnny Pham, and for the second time and first time knowingly to me with his standing desk, Dalton Willie.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Please do not adjust your debt.
I'm Tutu Atwell.
I don't know. I think his head is probably like a lot slimmer. Welcome in to episode 121 of the Half Point Per Podcast. We are so glad to have you guys here today. I wanted to start out this episode with a very special shout out. Dalton, you may know where this is going. Johnny, I haven't shared this with you, so you'll find this funny. Got a little text at 10:56 p.m. Monday night this week from a certain someone, Kathleen, Dalton's girlfriend, who texted. It's a group with both Dalton and I, who says, "Hey Evan, want to see how Dalton's team is getting outscored by mine this season?" I was like, "Oh, absolutely." She sends me a screenshot. She does have, it looks like, about 50 more points than Dalton. Dalton apparently so ashamed of it that his actual name isn't on the team. But just want you guys to know that when you think about which person you take advice from, one of us is getting outscored in a league by their girlfriend, who maybe should be the new co-host of the show, like third co-host, maybe. I don't know.
Would love to have her on.
I drafted that team and then gave it to its real owner. And since then, I have done waivers for her team and given her start-sit decisions every week. This is absurd.
I just thought it was funny. Johnny, Kathleen did say she's always happy to help out the pod. She is trying to improve the setting behind Dalton, so we see something else besides.
I mean,
walls. We've got a little piece of furniture over his left shoulder now.
Yep, there is a couch, and I know that's been a new addition since they at least started dating. So she is helping the pod. I do agree with that.
Yeah.
Hey, is this a football podcast or an interior designing podcast?
Not interior design, but injury reserve is where we're going to start with this one, Dalton, and that is Justin Jefferson. He is headed to the IR. And don't worry, we will get to the actual thumbnail of this show, which is a little bit of a rookie watch. We're going to go around the league, talk about how some of the rookies have fared so far, what we think about their prospects going forward. But this first one with JJ kind of ties into both categories here. He is headed to the IR. Kind of scary that it was quickly floated out there by Adam Schefter that his absence could be slightly longer than 4 weeks because of how the Vikings season is going, which, if you don't know, they're 1-4. I don't know if they're going to trade Kirk Cousins. I would expect they probably won't, just because that always sounds better in theory than like actuality, and contracts and stuff make that complicated, all that. But there is at least a risk that this season could go a certain way, and JJ is out for longer. Dalton, I'm curious, just first on your feel of that whole situation, and we will get to the Jordan Addison part of this with the first rookie check-in in a few minutes.
Well, the first thing I would say is the same day that news came out, Sam Bradford and then Colt McCoy were worked out by the Vikings, which is...
That was a little weird.
It's with the news that, like, Justin Jefferson may not return. Kirk Cousins on the last year of his contract. It's one of those situations where you're like, is he being shopped? Obviously, the Jets rumors have been pretty clean since Aaron Rodgers' injury.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say...
The Falcons are another one that makks sense, but also they would have to completely rework their system, I think, for that to actually make sense on the field. But from
Giants,
a skill set, yeah, the Giants, although... I think Kirk Cousins has a no trade clause. Johnny, yep, you're nodding your head. That's correct. If I'm Kirk Cousins, I am vetoing the hell out of a trade to the Giants.
But I will say, if I'm a Justin Jefferson owner and Kirk Cousins does get traded, I'm incredibly concerned that Justin Jefferson shuts it down for the year and the Vikings go on tank for QB2 in this draft. Watch. because I think that's a real possibility at this point with their roster. They have the 5th highest dead cap of any team in the NFL right now, too. So they're not built to contend.
I agree with you that like if this was my Madden franchise, he would not be seeing the field again this year. But like it is so difficult to do that in real life. Like these are real guys. They want to play. He's going to want to play. Like this is what they do for a living. It's just there's a human element that doesn't always get taken into account when we talk about things like this in basketball and football. But it really just like if he's ready to go in 4 weeks and is like 100% fine, then I think he probably comes back at a reasonable time. But if it's on the IR for 4 weeks and then he's still not quite right for another 2, then by that point you're like week 10, week 11, and then it's kind of getting a little dicey. So I can see it going both ways. So I guess if you're a Justin Jefferson owner, I'm assuming you probably have a pretty decent record right now. If you're 3-2, 4-1, what is the worst? We won't even say a 1-for-1 because I think a 1-for-1 you'd still feel pretty bad about it. Because if you're trading him on the hope to that person that he's going to be back later this year. What like type of trade package are you looking to get back if you are so freaked out and you just want to make sure you have locked in production at that spot?
Puka Nacua for Justin Jefferson.
Straight up.
Would you do it?
I'm doing that every time if I'm trading for Justin Jefferson.
Interesting. What if you're 2-2? 3-2.
I was gonna say if I'm 2-2, I'm looking to see what happened in my game this week. I think that's the type of league winning swing that I'm still willing to take and just hoping that, kind of common sense wins out a little bit. And he's not really, okay, maybe not common sense. Maybe that just kind of the real life human factors that go into NFL locker rooms and players and all of that kind of wins out and he's back in 4 or 5 weeks. Like I would trade Puka Nacua plus a bench running back to get Justin Jefferson right now.
The last thing I will say that I think is slightly important for this is the Vikings bye week is week 13. So you're losing 5 JJ games and one of them being a very pivotal week for fantasy playoff contention.
That's true. That's fair.
If I was trading him though, I would probably look for an underperforming wide receiver and a good running back. Like I would do T. Higgins and you probably couldn't get Bijan. Saquon and T. Higgins would be an interesting package. Grab 2 guys who were just coming back from injury. But
I would do that. I would do the Saquon T. Higgins side of that for sure.
Yeah, but I would be looking at teams who maybe have been doing well in spite of injuries and get their injured players. An Austin Eckler team, I might do a 1-for-1 for Eckler for JJ at this point.
Yeah, I don't think you could get that because Eckler's coming back, position of need, all of that. I don't think you could get a
off by.
Yeah.
I would also do Ayuk plus for just about anybody plus.
I would do Ayuk straight up. If I'm the JJ owner and take Ayuk.
Yeah, I love Ayuk, so I agree with that.
The other part of this is the rest of the offense outside of Addison, who again we'll get to. Is there anybody is this a TJ Hawkinson centric offense now? Are we, interested in any of these receivers, whether it's KJ Osborne? I already forgot of the name of the guy that randomly had 8 fantasy points on the Chiefs. Brandon Powell, I think, last weekend. Those would kind of be the other 2 receivers. It seems like any interest in either of those 2. Obviously, Osborne has been a guy who has done it before.
I mean, Kirk Cousins is playing at an MVP level in spite of the record. Other than the Carolina game, he's had 20-point outings almost every week.
Yep.
He was on pace to lead the league in touchdowns and yards through week 5. So, I mean, he's definitely a guy that I am going to put my trust in. KJ Osborne's probably been a popular waiver pickup. I'm not touching Brandon Powell, but I think the biggest winner here is Jordan Addison, who, I mean, he's shown some flashes of being a legitimate good wide receiver and worth the draft capital of a first-round pick.
I think Hawkinson, to me, is actually the biggest winner. I think his volume is going to go up. I think this offense is going to kind of center around him being the number one weapon. I do still think Addison is a, quote unquote winner, like a volume winner. The offense as a whole, obviously losers because, Cousins is playing great. The offense is humming, but they may find things to be a little bit different without that dude on the field going forward.
Yeah. No, and I mean, it's going to hurt everybody in that offense in a way. I think that no one's going to replace Justin Jefferson 1-for-1, but Kevin O'Connell and company are very good offensive schemers. The other thing I would watch for is Cam Akers getting involved in the passing game. I think Alexander Madison's been a pretty bona fide zero as a pass catching back for them this year. Obviously, he has the drops and the fumbles. And if Cam Akers gets that role,
he dropped a literal touchdown against the Chiefs the other day.
So yeah, he'd be the other guy I watch for. If his pass snaps start going up, he's probably a guy you can get off waivers in a lot of leagues still, just because he just hasn't done much.
So James Conner also headed to the IR. Rookie Amari DiMercato stepped in last week. Conner was off to a great start in that game. Real bummer that he got hurt. And it was a great run that he got hurt on too. I think he was at 6 carries for 46 yards already pretty early in the second quarter. DiMercato steps in, scores a touchdown, has pretty good numbers. Keontae Ingram has been the backup on the depth chart, but he's been out the last 2 games with, I guess, just a neck injury. We don't know anything more specific than that. It sounds like Dalton, he's going to play this week. I think they literally said we're going to have him back, and he's going to get carries, and we'll see how he does. Do you have a thought on who is the lead back, if anybody, if it's a hot hand approach, and if Corey Clement and Tony Jones will matter, and if they do, probably none of these guys matter?
I think it's Keontae Ingram. He was listed today as the RB1 of the depth chart, which depth charts are what they are. But he just does the pass blocking better than DiMercato does at this point, and he has familiarity in the system. The only reason he wasn't on the field, like you said, was he was hurt. And I mean, we've been big Keontae Ingram fans for 2 years now. I certainly think he has a skill set to do well here. And when a rookie pops off in the second half of the game like that, I'm not really looking to buy. If somebody spent high on DiMercato on your waivers, I would have been happy spending low and getting Keontae.
Yeah, so I've seen 2 pretty popular pro DiMercato, anti Ingram arguments that I'd like to address here. Number one is that, Ingram has never stepped in and had this sort of efficiency that DiMercato had in his first time basically being on the field in real action. I mean, Ingram has also never had an extended opportunity to have real volume and get in a real rhythm. He's had games where he's gotten touches, but he's never been like DiMercato was the unquestioned guy getting touches and was able to get into a rhythm and, had a nice game. And number 2, I think you're going to hear a lot of the third down stuff. Ingram has not been on the field for a third down this year. DiMercato, I think, is like at 17 snaps on third down. And to that, I would say, I think that's how this backfield is going to shape out. We have a first and second down back in Ingram, a short yardage guy, and a third down back in DiMercato. I mean, this is a guy who he was the scat back to Kendre Miller's between the tackles in college. I think you're going to see a similar type of split with this one.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say is we're still betting money on Arizona here, where the answer might just be more designed runs for Josh Dobbs, who's done a pretty good job at that so far this season. But
they like to run the ball a lot. So you got to figure there are going to be running back carries to be had. It's just, do they concentrate on one guy enough? Is it just 2 guys to where, they can both have low end flex value, or do a third or maybe fourth guy get involved here? And I think we agree.
And I think if I was ranking, I would have Ingram probably between 24 and 27, and then DiMercato a little farther down the line. Yeah, maybe like higher than 35, but no higher than 28 or so.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I admittedly can't act like I know a ton about the kid, but the film people who I do trust, the people who analyze these prospects for a living, I've heard multiple people say, he had pretty uninspiring film coming out of college. So it's not like this is a prospect that smart people are big time fans of, and he's finally getting a chance. Actually, kind of Keontae Ingram might be that guy. All right, Devon Achan. Speaking of a guy who finally got a chance, and boy, it was fun while it lasted, but it is going to have to take a couple of weeks off. He is slated to miss a couple weeks with a knee injury. He has got moved to the IR since I actually wrote this rundown, so he's out at least 4 weeks. Kind of like Connor, we don't have any details on the actual knee injury that I've seen, but out a month. So before we talk about kind of where we're left, let's talk about what in the world are we supposed to make of this first 2 games for this guy, and what do we do with him on our roster? Like, if someone's looking to trade him, not this week, but like they wait 2 weeks, and then if he's close to coming back, let's trade him. Like, what in the world should his value be in trades right now?
I mean, it's difficult because this was the entire concern with his draft position, and even picking him up in fantasy football was he's small and he's going to get hurt. And the what looked like the injury came on between the tackles run, which was where everybody thought he was going to not excel.
But also like you can't say that was or was not because of his size either.
The only concern I have is what the knee injury is, which unfortunately, if anybody listened to Mike McDaniel today, he just said it's the knee. Yeah. A lot of people give you like it's an MCL sprain, PCL sprain, and you can kind of abstract other fantasy data to see if guys come back better. We have none of that information, which is terrifying. I am just going to probably hold him if I own him. I'm not going to go out and trade for him, but I would not trade him because there's just more upside. You probably got him off waivers already. He was free for you. You should just wait and enjoy the ride for him to come back.
It's just so hard. I just so badly would like to know how I'm supposed to think about this guy, because he comes in and 2 games and he averaged like 10 yards a carry. And it's like, okay, obviously he's not going to do that. He's probably going to be like a 4 yards a carry guy. Like, that'll probably be what he ends up at. But it's like, he's impossible for me to wrap my brain around right now because he so badly broke my brain through 2 weeks. He was awesome. The scheme was awesome. All of it was awesome. It works perfectly in lockstep when you've got those 2 receivers who are able to stretch the defense like they do. And then you've got a world-class speedster who's able to get going on these reverses. It was a lot of fun, and I hope they're able to get back to it when he comes back.
It's Jeff Wilson season, baby.
So yeah, how does this offense look? Jeff Wilson designated to return. He's, I would assume, not playing this week. I haven't actually looked to see if that is or isn't true, but I would assume he's not playing this week. Usually you're designated to return. It's at least a week or 2 before you're actually back on the field. How does this offense look without Jeff Wilson, and then once Jeff Wilson does come back?
Well, the last 2 weeks, Raheem Mostert has had a 38% snap share among running backs on this team.
That is changing.
That has to change. They also play the 32nd rush defense in the Giants this week, and they're the number 1 rushing offense. No surprises there. So wheels up. I mean, I would not start him in most fantasy leagues, but if I was playing DFS, I would probably start Chris Brooks or Salvin Ahmed. And then Raheem Mostert's like a bona fide RB, like top 10 running back. No questions asked this week. But he's the only one I'm starting with any certainty. If Ahmed is out, I think Chris Brooks is the next guy up. He had a 40-yard run against the Broncos when they played them, and it was a blowout. So if you're really desperate, like some people in this podcast are, for running back production, I would start him. If you really need it and you're in a deep league, he's another guy I would just pick up if I'm trying to guess. And then if Jeff Wilson plays, I think he's a locked and started go.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I just went and looked on Twitter, and while it seems far from certain, it seems like kind of the vibe I'm getting is that it seems like Jeff Wilson may actually play this weekend. If that's the case, I kind of think we might see, because we've had Achan in this crazy role where he's getting, all these end arounds, all these outside runs, and Mostert has been the more between the tackles guy. I think we're going to get Mostert now in that Achan role, and then Jeff Wilson in the Mostert between the tackles role, because Jeff Wilson, he is the guy that sticks out as being slow, quote unquote slow compared to the rest of this offense. Whereas like Mostert, even though he's 31, he's still very fast.
Yeah. And I'm sure we're going to see some snaps where Tyreek Hill takes a handoff in the backfield. Like, that's just how this is probably going to go. Yeah. I think Mostert's the safest play out of this entire backfield this week, and the only one I would start with any certainty.
Yeah, and if you need to start Wilson, if he plays, I'm cool with it. If Wilson doesn't play and you have to start Ahmed, I am cool with that too, but a little bit less so. I would say, but yeah, Mostert is kind of a locked in top 15 running back until HN gets back, or until, in 2 weeks, it could be Jeff Wilson's taking 70% of the snaps, because that's kind of what happened last year. Mostert was good. He was kind of the guy. They trade for Jeff Wilson. And then it's like, oh, Jeff Wilson is playing a lot more. Now their offense is running a lot different this year, but maybe without HN, they kind of have to drift away from that style. We'll see. I think there's a lot of unknowns. You have to kind of be ready to embrace the unknown with this backfield right now.
Yeah, and I would be taking shots at anybody I can in any of my leagues in this backfield, because anybody's going to hit any week. They're the RB1 in this offense.
Yep. Okay, let's start on the rookies here. Let's go back to Minnesota. Justin Jefferson to the IR. I say Hawkinson is the biggest benefactor. You say Jordan Addison. Let's talk about him. What have you seen out of Jordan Addison this first month and change, Dalton?
Well, it's difficult because Jordan Addison has lined up in single coverage on 72% of his snaps this season. And the biggest concern with Jordan Addison was press coverage. And this is from our guys over at Football Guys. He's been pressed on 8% of his snaps at wide receiver. And
it's not been good when he's been pressed. Per reception perception, 48.7 success rate against press coverage this year.
Yeah. Wow, that was a team effort there to get the point across that any defense worth their salt is going to be pressing this wide receiver core, because KJ Osborne is what he is. He's a jag in the league. He's he gets it done here and there, but that's about it. Addison's a rookie with size concerns, and for as much as you want him to be the guy, TJ Hawkinson is still a tight end. Yeah. And on a bad offensive line.
He's a tight end not named Travis Kelce.
Yeah, and he's going to be doing a lot of chip coverages with the way this offensive line is playing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm wheels up on Jordan Addison, but I'm not putting him in like a top 20 wide receiver weekly ranking.
Yeah.
He's just not going to make that. He's going to have more volume, and the volume is going to probably be less efficient than it was when Justin Jefferson was there.
I was going to say he's the wide receiver 28 right now, averaging about 10.5 points per game. I think he'll end up in a very similar neighborhood to that. It'll just look different. It'll be less efficient, more volume, probably fewer deep bombs because he's getting pressed and he's not, he's just not. I don't think he's going to be able to win in the same way he was, because he's going to be playing number one corners. He's probably going to have a guy kind of shading his way, because you're not scared of Osborne. You're definitely not scared of Brandon Powell. And I couldn't even tell you who is fourth in that receiver room.
Is Jalen Reagor still there?
Yeah, actually, I think he might be.
Yeah. So, I mean,
look, the Eagles chose him over JJ one spot in time. This is his chance to really go out and earn that.
Yeah. But yeah, he's wide receiver 3 with like wide receiver 2 upside, as long as Justin Jefferson is out.
But I want to say, like, it basically what he was in college has been exactly what he's been so far. You said it, I said it. He struggled against press coverage, but a lot of the good has translated too. He's good at the in-breaking routes, post, slants, deep crossers. He's like the ideal 1B. The question is, can he be the number one? And he was kind of in that perfect spot where we didn't have to figure that out. Now, I think we're going to learn a lot about him as a prospect. But I want to be careful. If he struggles, I don't want to say, oh, he can never develop this. No, he's a rookie. This is his 6th game he's coming up to this week. So we can always improve. But we're going to learn a lot about where he's at right now, because you know what? Maybe by week 7 or 8, he surprises us and he keeps getting, because he's 21. He's really young. He's one of the youngest guys in this draft class. So I think it'll be one of the more interesting situations, both for redraft and specifically for Dynasty, to follow with Addison in Minnesota. Like, he's going to get a lot more layups in this offense. He's got that kind of skill set. If he's able to also beat press coverage, then it could get pretty exciting for Addison pretty quickly.
Yeah, and the last thing on this is I trust the Vikings coaching staff to put him in motion, get him off those coverages, and force them out of press situations. It's not going to work every play, and they are working with liabilities in their offensive line game. But I still think Kevin O'Connell and company are going to be able to get him in positive-looking situations. It's not like every game they're just going to line him up out wide make them win one-on-one
Right.
against every cornerback one. But there will be their ups and downs.
Right. For sure. We agree. Okay. Zay Flowers, a guy that he can do it versus press coverage. He can do it against man. He can do it against zone. This guy is good. Loved him before the draft. Love him now. I know he had a frustrating day if you started him in fantasy, or even if you have him on your team and you just want to see your player do well because you want to start him the following week. I don't remember his exact line, but he had like 9 fantasy points. He could have easily had like a 10 for 150 and a touchdown type of day. Lamar misses him on the bomb. He has 2 other horrendous drops, 2 of the 7 drops by that receiver and tight end room for Baltimore the other day. So that was tough. But, there was a little bit of smoke on Twitter after a week or two, like, oh, this guy's a gadget guy, like kind of, be careful. Dalton, you and I both saw that going around, and he's just not. He runs all of the routes you want from number 1 receiver, and he runs them well. 70% success versus man, 85% versus zone. I did not put in the press coverage because it was too small of a sample size, but it's very good in the very small sample size. This guy's awesome. He can do it all. He's winning all over the field. He just needs to catch the ball next time.
Yeah, well, if you rewatch the video of the deep ball he missed,
that one was not his fault.
Yeah, the all 22 shows that like the wind actually took it, and that's what he said in the presser afterwards, is that the wind moved the ball, and it just lost his tracking there, which again, he's a rookie. That happens. I'm not going to talk a ton about Zay Flowers because we've done it before in the show. We love him. He's great. I will say it's been a slower start to the Baltimore offense than we talked about in the offseason.
Yeah.
Besides all of that,
Odell's been hurt, Bateman's been hurt and has not gotten off the ground. Andrews been in and out too. So Zay's been the only guy who's been there. Yeah, lose Dobbins obviously week 1. So it's just been Lamar and Zay having kind of the mainstays. So at least Lamar has that. At least Lamar has Zay there. So it's not just him and Nelson Aguilar again, like it probably could have been without him.
Well, yeah, and Nelson Aguilar's fine as a 3, which he showed in that game. But going into last week, Lamar was first in the NFL in completion percentage and on target throws. He's still first in on target throws. Completion percentage took a terrible hit in that game because of the drops. It just, for anybody who started Lamar Jackson, just so you know, his real stat line without any drops would have been, and no yak as well, which Zay's catch probably would have been touchdown. Right. It was 340 yards and 3 touchdowns compared to his outputting of 200 yards and no passing touchdowns.
Even if they just connect on that deep ball, where again Zay was open, Lamar's throw was looking good coming out of his hand. And if you're watching the all 22, you can literally see the wind grab that ball. You can see the flags on the field goal post moving pretty quickly. It is Cleveland, or not Cleveland. It is Pittsburgh, Dalton. So not quite the lake effect like Cleveland is what I meant to say.
Not the lake effect.
But you still have some weather up there.
And it was the 4th most lost fantasy points to drops from a quarterback since 2000. Sorry. That's according to fantasy points and data. So better days are ahead. I think there are some major boom games coming for Zay. I think this offense is still learning Todd Monken's system. They're playing at the 6th fastest rate in the NFL, and their passing above expectation is 9th in the NFL. So it's everything we thought. It just hasn't hit yet, but it's a game I'm going to continue to bet on. And Zay Flowers is a guy who has been everything we thought he was, and then some.
He's getting crazy volume. So like the only concern there is if Bateman does eventually start to look a little more right and Odell stays healthy, maybe the volume won't be quite there, but it's been there from the jump. It was like, oh, when Mark Andrews comes back, it won't be there. Oh, it's actually, he just had 11 targets last. Like, this guy is getting wide receiver 1, like Deontay Johnson type of target share right now in this offense.
Yeah, I think it's wheels up. And I mean, post-week bye bump, who knows what we're going to see from this guy.
Yep, that's true. All right, Jaden Reed, a little bit lower on the totem pole here. But this is the order that we are going in because I was looking at my dynasty roster first when making this list. He's been mostly a slot guy, 3 receiver set guy. But Dalton, I think both you and I and a lot of others have really liked the limited stuff that we've seen from Jaden Reed.
Yeah, well, he's also the 12th most efficient kick returner in the NFL right now.
Yeah.
So he's done a good job there. You love to see rookies just getting reps like that.
He's our punt returner too.
Yeah. My concern would be Jordan Love just actually might suck. Like going back to week 1, they blew up the Bears, and we now know why they blew up the Bears. This offense has 4, 5 mouths to feed, depending on who you're counting, between Dobbs, Watson, Jones, Musgrave, and Reed. I think Reed has been everything we wanted him to be, which is he didn't have the pedigree in the draft, mostly because he played on a Michigan State team that Keon Coleman, who's blowing up at Florida State right now, had to transfer out of the program just to prove a point.
Right.
And Jaden Reed was his league mate, and their quarterback didn't even go for 3,000 yards their last year together, which is really surprising.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's a first round pick, potentially next year, and then obviously Reed was a second round pick.
Yeah, so I'm still liking him. I think he's a guy. If I have shallow benches in my league, he's someone I'm watching on waivers. If I have a deeper bench, he's someone I'm putting on it just to see if injuries occur somewhere else and the volume goes up. But I think a lot of his issues the rest of the season are going to be quarterback play and whether or not Jordan Love figures it out, which is starting to look like he might not.
Yeah, and like Reed is a guy for me, both the things you said with waivers and watching him or putting him on your bench depending on roster size. He's also like, if you're in a league where he's on another roster, the guy that has him may not know what he has in Reed, because what he has in Reed, or what he or she has in Jaden Reed, is a guy that, he's produced a little bit, but it's been low volume. He's made a couple nice plays, a couple deep catches, a couple touchdowns, but it's like, whatever. This guy's whatever. He's like, if you're negotiating with a Jaden Reed manager and you can just get him as a throw in, like you could get him as a little cherry on top of a trade. Like I'm looking to do that all day. The Jordan Love concerns are very real. That's why he is a stash, not a start at this point. But if those concerns improve at all this year, which they could, I tend to agree with you that it's not looking good, but also the NFL, outside of the very best teams, is such a week-to-week deal that we don't know what this will look like in 3 weeks. It could look, not significantly better, but it could look better. You've got a great offensive mind. You've got nice weapons, fine offensive line, all of that. Not having Aaron Jones for so much of this early part has not helped Jordan Love in this offense. This is a guy that has a 75% success rate against man, 77% against zone from reception perception. But get this, he has a 100% success rate running slants this year. And those are 20% of his sampled routes. Like you mentioned volume, that is how you eventually turn into a volume hog. It may not be this year, but it could also be this year. So just something to keep in the back of your mind.
Yeah, no, and I definitely buy into that. And listen, Romeo Dobbs has had like an electric start to the year as far as target share goes, and I think he's like a top 30 wide receiver right now.
Yep. He's been good, but you notice every one of his catches is very contested.
Yeah, the point I'm kind of pitter-pattering around here is I think that Jaden Reed is better. I think he will end up being better. I think it's just a matter of time with the rookie. We also just saw a game where their entire passing game centered around Watson and Musgrave. So it's just going to be rough. And it's the Raiders, too. It was a game that I would have called a smash start for Jordan Love. He wasn't able to get it done. So one of those situations I'm watching, if one of those guys goes down for a while, I think Jaden Reed gets into the flex conversation pretty quickly.
Yeah, for sure. Because he's got to play in more than just 3 receiver sets to truly be a factor there. So something to watch, but the underlying stuff looks good with him. So he is a guy to monitor for sure. And now this is a guy, Dalton, that all we have right now is underlying stuff. And that is Marvin Mims. Woof. He himself has been good when given the chance, but he has more than 2 targets one time this year. He's played above 35% of the snaps 0 times, as many times as I have this year in the NFL. But the thing is, like, the deep play stuff, it is clearly translating. This is a guy, he's had multiple games where he's come in, had his nice deep ball, and then you just don't hear from him for another quarter and a half. It's kind of the Andy Reid thing with rookies sometimes, where it's like, oh, rookie made a great play. There he goes again. Up there he comes out 2.5 quarters later for another drive. That's kind of what we're seeing with Mims. Obviously, he has a veteran coach in Sean Payton. It's reasonable to think that maybe Payton is a more old-fashioned guy who wants to see the rookie kind of earn it a little bit in that room. And then, a lot of times NFL coaches, I think one thing that we have to relearn every year, because we do get excited for these prospects, and there's a reason for that, because these guys turn into league winners a lot down the stretch. Like you want to hit on the right rookie because they're cheap, and a lot of times you can find rookies that end up like top 20 at their position for stretches to end the season. But there's also the cold reality of a lot of times it just takes time. A lot of times we don't know why, but these coaches ease these guys along. Maybe it's for a great reason and we just can't see it because we're not in the building, or maybe the coach is wrong. It can go both ways. And I tend to think Sean Payton just needs to wisen up a little bit with this one. You can keep the role the same, just make it more frequent. Just give the guy more frequent deep shots, right? Like come on, what are we doing here?
Yeah, well, and we're in a situation where the Broncos look to be in full teardown. Jerry Jeudy followed the entire Panthers team on Instagram, but allegedly didn't request
That's
a
the
trade.
wide receiver. Oh my god!
Not saying that like he's getting traded to the Panthers, but he's also been like doing the wide receiver thing where you tweet cryptic shit all over Twitter. So there's just clearly some unease in that locker room. Marvin Mims has clearly been the best receiver. Cortland Sutton leads the team in targets, and Marvin Mims has 50 more yards than Cortland Sutton on the season, which is hard to do when you're not playing above 33. He's the wide receiver 43, despite never playing more than 30% of the team's snaps. Sean Payton,
his box score is just funny to look at because he has a game with like 2 catches for 113 yards. So he has a game where he's like at 56 yards per catch.
Yeah. But I mean, it's undeniable that he's the only player getting open on deep routes for this team.
Yeah.
Like Jerry Jeudy almost had one against the Jets. But this is a guy who I would have on every bench in every league, because if he gets 70% of their snaps, there becomes a very good like boom game where he can go off. Think Christian Watson last year. The guy didn't play any snaps for over half the season, and then he had 9 touchdowns in 6 weeks. And that's the same kind of impact I think Marvin Mims can have. And the Broncos have been trying to trade, for what it's worth, Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy for the better half of a year now. And if either of those guys go, it increases his opportunity. Little Jordan Humphrey was released today. I know like that's such a niche thing, but he was also getting 42% of the team's snap share and one of their leading run blockers. So definitely a guy that I'm not dropping. I'm not giving up on. I'm not starting until I see it. But Russ has been good. It has not been Russ that has caused a lot of the problems in this team.
He hasn't caused them, but he's not helping them.
For fantasy, he's been just exactly what you want.
He's been fine.
Yeah, he's not going to cost your wide receivers, and he still has a bit of a deep ball. So stashing, holding, everything is there with like the efficiencies, the targets per route run, the yards per route run. What's not there is he's not playing. We need him to play if we want anything more to happen.
Yeah, I think what you should come away with this is we both view him just as favorably as we did coming out of college, which is good because he hasn't done much. And it's good to know that when he's had the chances, he looks like that guy. You mentioned the run blocking with Little Jordan Humphrey. That is a potential item on a list of things that can get veterans playing time over rookies. So perhaps that's one thing. Now that's just complete speculation, but perhaps that is one of the issues for Mims. Don't know. But one guy who has been pretty good as a run blocker, and that is why he's getting on the field a lot more than most Chiefs rookie wide receivers, Dalton, is Rashee Rice. What have you liked about Rashee Rice so far? Because I think we've both been pleasantly surprised after a lot of the pre-draft coverage of him.
Yeah, well, to start with it, he has the second most explosive rating among wide receivers. Now, his snap share among those wide receivers is lower than almost every other guy on the list. But going back to the Bears game, he has 2 catches that ended the 1-yard line. Very easily could have been touchdowns there. He obviously has a touchdown week 1. He has been one of the few bright spots in this Chiefs offense. He will Andy Reid is historically a coach who does not let his rookies on the field early on. We saw that with Sky Moore. Part of that was Sky Moore just wasn't playing well. The other part is this is a complicated playbook, and it takes time for guys to learn it. he's someone I want to see more of. I want to see on the field more often. He has the yak ability. His issue coming out of college was that he wasn't a clean route runner. That doesn't seem to be a problem with the Chiefs right now. They are running him on pretty simple routes.
Not against zone. Against man, I think it's kind of been what people expected, which was a little bit raw, but he already can get open against zone. 85% or 83% success rate, against zone per reception perception.
Yeah. So he's doing what he needs to do. Among rookie wide receivers, he's probably been the second biggest surprise. The first, obviously, being Puka Nacua, because he's seeing such immediate playing time. But I think a lot of us did a 1-for-1 with him and Sky Moore and was like, it's just not going to happen this year. I think as a Chiefs fan, I would rather see him on the field in the slot than Sky Moore a lot of the time.
Yeah. And I want to see him taking snaps from MVS and Watson on the outside. Not that both those guys can't be out there at different times, but I want to see Rice get a chance to do that too. And the thing that you like about him is he's got juice in the open field, and the Chiefs offense has kind of lacked that juice in the that explosiveness a little bit. Harmon has this, I guess you'd call it a metric. It's in space plays. I think 18% of Rice's charted plays have been in space. He's broken a tackle on 72% of those plays, which is pretty damn impressive.
Yeah. And I mean, the last thing we'll say on this is we've been a fan of just taking shots at the Chiefs wide receiver room with guys that aren't MVS or Justin Watson. And you should.
Well, and we said last week, what needs to happen? It's Rice or Tony.
Yeah. Well, and Tony saw more snaps too. He's at 33%. Big boom there. But
yeah, man, let's go.
Yeah, look at him go. But no, I think those two continue to be the two that I'm most prominently exposed to and want to be exposed to on this team, because I think they just have the best potential. And post-bye week Chiefs will be a very interesting look, because eventually this wide receiver room has to consolidate, because the offense is out of sync in a lot of their time. Despite being successful, I think they've been out of sync the majority of games.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. And if he does, which a lot of teams you look around and you can't say for certain that they have great coaching. Like I heard Matt Waldman make this point, this rookie receiver, Quentin Johnston, notably not on this list because he's not done anything. Are we sure he's going to get coached up in Los Angeles by the Chargers to not have his issues at the point of attack on catches? No, we're not sure, because it's the Chargers. What I am sure about is if Rashee Rice has the ability in there to be a refined route runner and be good against man coverage, the Chiefs and Andy Reid will get that out of him. It is just about, does he have that ability? And if he does have that ability, he's already good and comfortable against zone coverage. Mahomes already clearly has a little bit of trust in the guy. I would say behind it goes Kelsey, Justin Watson, and then maybe Rashee Rice as far as just trust power rankings on this offense. What do you say?
I put Jerick McKinnon at 3, but otherwise,
I'm talking about receiver. I include Kelsey as a receiver.
Okay, yeah, I might put it there. I mean, he has the third most red zone looks on this team, despite running a sub 30% snap share the majority of the season. So yeah, a lot of trust there by Mahomes and company.
He's a stash until you see him get over 50% of the snaps, but it's been encouraging so far. A guy that we should mention, we actually have in a question here, so we'll get to this trade first and then bring up Puka Nacua briefly. PPR League, Jalen Waddle and Jonathan Taylor for Travis Etienne and Puka Nacua. Dalton, I think this is about as close to a wash as you're going to see. I would value both of those guys almost exactly equal. And I think if you're looking for upside, it's the Waddle Jonathan Taylor side. If you're looking for more of a guaranteed floor type of production, it is the Etienne Puka side.
Yeah, I'm taking Etienne and Puka on this trade. I just need to see more from Jonathan Taylor, and it's not been stated enough.
Playing 10 snaps didn't do it for you, huh?
No. Well, and like I understand everybody's like, well, look at Zach Moss. He's doing great. The Zach Moss runs, a lot of them, those defenses were keyed in on Anthony Richardson running the ball. That's clearly not happening with his injury going forward. And Jalen
Yeah,
Waddle.
we should mention out 4 to 8 weeks. Didn't mention that at the top because everyone knows go get Gardner Minshew if you are in a deep league, or just leave him on waivers until you need a streamer. But a big time bummer.
Yeah, huge bummer. And I don't know what this offense looks like without him. ETN is leading the NFL in forced missed tackles at 27, 4 more than Christian McCaffrey at 23.
Shocking.
Yeah, and Puka Nacua is like Robert Woods 2.0 in the
Yep.
Rams offense that we want. So
I feel pretty good about that. We kind of said that really early on, and now obviously it wasn't that hard to jump on the hype train early, but it has kind of shaken out that way. And through 1 week, like it looks like we're going to be able to get Cooper Kupp wide receiver 1-ish and Puka Nacua as a low end 2.
Yeah, and pretty comfortable with that because you probably got him for nothing.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. All right. Another guy, Dalton, not much to say about the on the field stuff with Jonathan Mingo because there has not been much. He has just over 100 yards. He's had okay volume, but there just hasn't been much to like about this offense so far. Adam Thielen has had a good start. Other than that, kind of is what it is. I think the only question I have for Mingo is, do you think this Thielen production, it's not going to last the tune of a top 10 to 12 receiver, but does it have the staying power to hold off Jonathan Mingo as anything worthwhile in redraft leagues this year?
Jonathan Mingo is third in the NFL among rookies in routes run. In healthy games, sorry, because he did miss a game. Despite that, he is dead last in targets per route run and fantasy points per route run. Like, it couldn't be worse. Like, this is probably the worst rookie right now among the wide receiver core of anybody drafted with a significant draft capital.
I would say Quentin Johnston has still been worse.
Yeah, sorry. I forget about him because we were so out on Quentin Johnston that I forget he exists. But yeah, so second worst. And at least Quentin Johnston isn't on a roster if you're in redraft. Mingo, you might have taken, and he might be an anchor because he's on the field for 80% of the snaps.
Yeah.
And the team is now looking for a wide receiver 1 very heavily and very evidently. And their head coach is saying,
Jerry Jeudy, let's go.
Yeah, Jerry Jeudy. And their head coach is saying they wish they drafted CJ Stroud, not Bryce Young. It is a mess in Carolina. It's been a mess in Carolina. I simply, like, this isn't a stash for me. This is a let somebody else deal with this headache. I don't think there's a path this year for him. I don't know. I don't have any hope here. There's no metric that gives me any hope for this guy.
Yeah. Hey, George Play, tell me if that's a super flex league or not before I'm able to answer that question. But yeah, I agree with you. Pretty much everything you said on Mingo there. On the Bryce Young, Frank Reich really did say that. And the Panthers are just bound and determined to ruin every like good young player who comes through there, because I know it's been a struggle. I do still believe in Bryce Young. I do still think this is a good player that, while I would have taken Anthony Richardson number 1, I think the jury's very much still out on Stroud versus Young, and that is probably not the consensus take right now, but it's still so early. The one thing Brett Coleman said with him is that he's making mistakes right now that you just wouldn't expect that he wasn't making in college. And it wasn't like, it's not learning the game, learning coverages stuff. It is getting baited by hang corners because he's just not seeing it well. And that's he's thrown multiple interceptions where it's been like, oh, a guy is rotated right up to where he's throwing. Like, it's just perfect. Like, it's just like a user lurk in Madden is what's happened to him like 3 times. Yeah. Already this year. But what I will say about him, he is in by far the worst situation of those top 3 quarterbacks. His coach, number 1, don't think he's been very helpful for him because number 1, he's saying things like that. Number 2, through 3 weeks, now this is again through 3 weeks. I don't have the stats for the last 2, but through 3 weeks, this is his breakout with 5-man pros, 56% completion percentage, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, 3.5 yards per attempt. Now you give him a 6-man protection. It is 6 of 7 attempts, 6 of 7 for 67 yards, almost 10 yards a play. So maybe let's try to do that a little bit more, huh? Like, this is an offensive line that is bad. A receiver room that is bad. why don't we give this guy a little bit of protection? He's clearly struggling, processing quickly enough. We kind of knew that the runaround stuff wasn't going to work like it is in college, like it did in college. I think he's learning that. He looked a little bit better last week, I would say, but he needs help from his coaches. He needs more help on the field. For redraft, you're forgetting about him. For dynasty, give him time. That would be my takeaway here.
Yeah, I would say biggest lesson from this is landing spot matters.
Yes.
Coaching staff matters. CJ Stroud, obviously the coaching staff there is doing a better job. Obviously the wide receiver room is doing better.
Yep.
I think Robert Woods would probably be the bona fide one in Carolina.
Well, Adam Thielen is. So I mean, he's just he's just Carolina Robert Woods, basically.
Yeah, he's just thrown to dust. And like you said, redraft, forget about him. Don't even try to stream him unless something magical happens. Dynasty, I hope you taxied him, or I hope he never has to see your starting lineup.
That felt targeted.
I don't know what you're talking about.
That felt targeted for me with Bryce Young not in my taxi and a week looking at a week 10 start. But do you know who the Panthers play in week 10 on Jalen Hurts' bye week?
Who?
The Chicago Bears. So I am in business.
I don't know how many games the Chicago Bears can play in where I say this, but that's a stoppable force meets a movable object yet again.
Okay, we do have a question from George Play 01. He's in a one quarterback league. He's 5-0. Tua, Christian McCaffrey, Kenneth Walker, Cooper Kupp, Chris Olave, Dallas Goedert, James Cook in the flex. Should he trade his other quarterback, which is Justin Fields, and Kenneth Walker for Bijan? Yes. Just wanted to make sure it was super flex before I told you to do that.
Yeah, no, I did. Bijan hasn't even broke out yet. He's playing amazing.
We'll get to him in a minute. Anthony Richardson mentioned the injury. Not too much to say here other than he has done everything you would want when he's on the field. It's just he can't stay on the field. So that is the concern, and that's really the only concern I have right now. I would like to see them dial back the design runs a little bit because he has shown he's a capable passer, very good passer. Let him drop back a little bit more. Let him scramble more and have it. Now, will he slide? Not sure, but give him the ability to make those decisions to slide and avoid those big hits that he doesn't really have on those design QB runs all the time. But love what I've seen so far.
Yeah. Among quarterbacks, if you put Anthony Richardson at starting all 4 quarters, which he clearly hasn't done often, he is the highest scoring quarterback in fantasy at 29.6 points. Obviously, the guy needs to learn to slide, like you said. The shoulder injury, I don't know if that one's on him as much. He got hit from behind, but the other 2 injuries, the concussion as well as the shin injury that happened in week 1.
He almost has as many injuries as weeks played.
Yeah.
But as weeks played by the entire NFL, for him, I think it's actually equal, 3-3.
Yeah, it is equal. I will say, like, the passing is there, like you said, he's done well. Shane Steichen has clearly proven to be a great offensive mind. He coached Herbert up his rookie year, made him look great. Obviously, Philly's offense hasn't looked the same without him, while it's still been efficient. Mm-hmm. Excited going forward. It sounds like because it's throwing shoulder, there's a chance he doesn't play the rest of this year. I mean, that seems like they're going to reevaluate it after 4 weeks.
4 to 8 weeks was the timeline we heard, which means they don't know. It's a long ways out.
Yeah, and this is also a guy who, like, one of his biggest assets is his deep ball, and if his shoulder isn't right, like, it's just not there for him. So I mean, very well, we might not see him until 2024.
Yep, which is sad. CJ Stroud, he's been good. He's been very, very good. I will say for fantasy, it's kind of what we thought coming out. You know, he's looked exactly like he did in college, which is great. But for fantasy, that's good. Fringe top 12 quarterback type of guy, which is good. It's valuable, and you want that. But he doesn't run at all. For as good as he's been for a rookie, this Texans offense still isn't setting the scoreboard on fire by any means. So it's like you're kind of hoping for 250 and 2 passing touchdowns, which, again, you're happy with that in your lineup, but it's not like he's having the full-fledged, like, winning your league as a rookie quarterback. But from a real-life perspective, I don't think anybody could be happier with how he's looked so far.
Yeah, and he's had that connection with Tank Dell, who he won in the draft and who I think a lot of people were skeptical of, who's proven to be a legitimate NFL caliber wide receiver. Nico Collins is having the breakout that a lot of people have been waiting on.
Yep. And I think that's what we care about more, is that he's good enough that Nico Collins can do that.
Yeah. And he's also doing this he has not played the same offensive line any week.
Yeah.
So like it's one of those situations where other quarterbacks in the league, Daniel Jones, Bryce Young, are getting a lot of like, oh, well, their offensive lines aren't there. But this guy's doing it with a bad offensive line. When he has more than 3 seconds to throw, he is averaging a EPA per play of 9. And when he does not have more than 3 seconds to throw, he's still at 7. Like he's there. He's just doing it both ways. But if this offensive line gets short up, we could see bigger weeks coming. And obviously he's a rookie. Like there's improvements to be made all around. Very excited about CJ Stroud and this Texans offense.
Yep. The other thing that is at least worth mentioning is that he is a rookie, so there was no book on him. There is now a book. So if you see him struggle a little bit for a couple weeks, don't just be like, oh, let's throw out these first 4 or 5 weeks, and he, basically don't dock him too much if he goes through a rough patch, because that is what happens with young players.
Yeah, I agree. I still would not want him to be my number 1 starter in any reasons, but like a perfectly fine streaming option.
Yep. I think I agree with that. All right, Sam Laporta, a perfectly fine starter, the starter at tight end right now, tight end 1 now on a points per game basis. He's tight end 3 behind Kelsey and Andrews, who have both missed time. But you could not have asked for a much better start. You couldn't ask for a better situation. I mean, you've got Jared Goff, who's been perfectly good, Ben Johnson, one of the best play callers in the NFL, and the Lions are kind of that perfect fantasy situation for receivers and the tight end, where it's like, I know I care about Amon-Ra St. Brown. I know I care about Sam Laporta. They're giving me streaming value in Josh Reynolds, and that's it. And we'll see about Jameson Williams going forward, but you love that. You love the start. This guy has 3 touchdowns already this year. He had 5 in 4 years at Iowa. Shout out Brian Ferentz.
Yeah, I mean, he is proving that anybody who's just saying either rookie tight ends don't produce, that's clearly not the case.
Yes, you can't flex about Kincaid and then brag about Laporta because your reasoning was for Kincaid what exactly you just said.
Yeah, since week 2, I use week 2 because it's when Travis Kelce started playing. He's third among all tight ends in targets. Only TJ Hawkinson and Kelce are above him. When it comes to explosive rating among tight ends, he's second in the NFL with TJ Hawkinson above him. Like everything he's done has been there. This offense is moving along just fine. Ben Johnson will be a head coach next year and is a great offensive mind. I mean, there's not enough nice things you can say about this Sam Laporta situation.
Yeah, he blocks well, which that's how you're going to get on the field as a tight end. For Dan Campbell, you can do that stuff, but also he can run around like a legit wide receiver. This guy's good. From a dynasty perspective, the list of guys you want ahead of him is pretty short. I've seen people make the argument for him as a tight end 1. I'm not quite ready to go there, but like, I'm not going to say that's a crazy take. He's definitely in that top 3 to 4 guys in dynasty right now.
Yeah, no, he's definitely. I mean, if you draft him, it's free money, and it's just the freest money in the world is taking any tight end that played at Iowa at this point.
And this is a great example of why you play the waiver wire game with tight end unless you draft Travis Kelce, because you get guys like this. Now, you don't get rookies like this often, but you find breakouts like this at tight end frequently.
What would you guess his underdog ADP was?
It was among tight ends, like tight end 19.
He was tight end 18. So you're
wow.
Yeah.
Woo!
And anybody who got, I mean, that means he was going in like the 16th round in underdog drafts. Absolute steal. Hopefully,
let me ask you, Darren Waller or Sam Laporta rest of season?
Okay, well that's unfair.
I'm Sam Laporta, but I know that people know who you're a fan of, so I want to hear your take.
Darren Waller. I'm not backing down.
Never back down, never what?
Next question. Darren Waller, Travis Kelce, Darren Waller. Moving on.
Question from Mark Yosko in the chat. Should I trade Swift and Hopkins for Olave, Justin Jefferson, and Warren? Yes.
Yeah, definitely. I see
the downgraded running back is tough. but your risk of Jefferson is insulated by Olave, who I know has struggled. It has not been his fault. Still caught the touchdown last week. Obviously, Carr was so injured the week before. That was the issue. And then also, Olave had a catch last week that was about 45 yards down the sideline that I'm pretty confident, had the Saints challenged, would have stood. So as someone who cares about the Chris Olave season-long wide receiver yardage prop, I was quite perturbed at that.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that. I mean, Hopkins for Olave, you're getting just two straight-up wide receiver ones in Olave and Jay Jettas. And then I think Warren is a fine. I mean, he's going to put up 7 or 8 points a week.
Yeah, it's a fine flex.
Yeah. So I'd do that. And then Roshan Johnson, I mean, Khalil Herbert's going to be out for multiple weeks, so there's a good potential for him being a solid RB2 to give you a bridge.
Yep, agreed. Especially this week. Obviously, Warren is on his bye. We said we get the Bijan. Not much to say here. He's been great. He's the running back 8. I still don't think he has a rushing touchdown. He has a receiving touchdown. He was it this most recent game or 2 games ago where we got the nice little shot of him catching it, almost putting it clear behind his back, bringing it back, and then scoring. I think that was this week. He's really good. I think really the only question is he that Saquon Barkley, Breece Hall, Nick Chubb level prospect we were promised? I say yes.
Yeah, no, he is that guy. The only issue is it's a 3-to-1 snap count in the red zone. The 3 being Tyler Algier.
Yes.
The 1 being Bijan Robinson. Clear stealing stopper for him. It's unfortunate for what it is, but Tyler Algier does a fine job in the red zone. I don't think they're going to change that up. Arthur Smith, pretty dead set in his ways, despite what we fantasy players say, and despite who they spend draft capital on. I will say, among all qualifying running backs, he's 3rd in forced missed tackle rate. He's 2nd in yards before contact. He's 5th in the NFL in yards of 20-plus yards. And this is him at a 60% snap share. If at any point Tyler Algier goes down and this guy's getting a 90% snap share, it's insane. This is an offense that we saw make Cordell Patterson a legitimate every week starter.
Mm-hmm.
And if he can get in that 90% share, and if Desmond Ridder can put the ball on some of his guys a little better, all of a sudden, Bijan Robinson is what CMC is right now.
I'm convinced that the NFL bought the Falcons that Skycam just because we wanted to see all of these shots of his cuts. He is such an electric cutter, man. He's so fun to watch. All right, Zach Charbonnet. A little bit surprising here, Dalton. Zach Charbonnet, explosive rush percentage, which is rushes of 10 yards or more and minimum 20 touches. He is 5th in the NFL among all running backs. A lot of young guys on that list. Also, James Conner rounding out that list. RIP James Conner. He's shown the power that we'd expect, has trucked a few guys. This is a guy who's a top 10 running back by PFF grade. Great pass blocker. That's helping out too. That has shown up right away. But he's the RB62, which they had their bye week, but 3.7 points per game. So he's not produced yet, really, on the field. But I think it's coming. I like this guy a lot. I'm not saying he's going to overtake Kenneth Walker, but I am very interested what things look like post-bye this week. And then as we continue, he is 8th in rush yards over expected, 5th in success rate in the entire NFL. This guy's good.
Yeah, you stole my stats, so thanks for that one.
You're welcome.
But everything we said about in the preseason, I haven't seen anything to indicate otherwise. He hasn't had the pop-off game. His workload has been steadily increased every week, and we've said about this entire podcast, but after the bye, rookies play better. It's just how the NFL works. It's pretty well documented at this point that they get those reps underneath them. Kenneth Walker also, if you take away his touchdowns, he's just not doing as well as many other guys. So I'm not saying Kenneth Walker's washed, but I'm saying a 50-50 split is not outside of my realm of believing.
I think we've got J-Law in the chat here because Zach Charbonnet has just been put on the trade block in our Dynasty League.
But I wouldn't trade for him in Dynasty for much.
I'm a fan for sure. Speaking of guys I'm a fan of, man, Tajay Spears, that dude is just so good. If anything happens to Derrick Henry, this is a top 12 running back. And that explosive run rate I mentioned earlier, 2 spots ahead of Zach Charbonnet is Tajay Spears. He is explosive. He is shifty. He is on the field a lot. He is trusted in a lot of situations for a rookie running back under curmudgeonly head coach and Mike Vrabel. He's the RB30, so the production is also kind of there already. And if the Titans are not in the playoff hunt down the stretch, I don't think it's impossible that we see a shift in this backfield, not because Henry isn't performing, but because he's probably not going to be there next year, and Tajay Spears is. And if that does happen, this is your league winner right here.
Yeah, I buy into that. Friend of the show, Matt Harmon, had his aspirational comp for Tajay Spears as Jamal Charles. And this is not an offense where it's easy to take away rushes from, the 3-time Triple Crown winner at running back in Derrick Henry. And Mike Vrabel clearly trusts Derrick Henry. The snap shares in any game where the Titans haven't been ahead by 2+ touchdowns are 60-40 Tajay Spears in favor. And he's just been everything as advertised.
And to be clear, when he has had more snaps, he has not had more touches. I just want to make that distinction. But he is still on the field a lot, and he is getting some touches.
Yes, that is correct. He's doing a lot more of the pass blocking, probably giving Derrick Henry spells to rest because he is 29 years old. But in spite of all of that, like no one else to date, including guys like Deion Lewis, who had a good career in New England, were able to take Derrick Henry off the field. And this is his first year, and he's only going to grow. He's running behind the worst offensive line in the NFL, ranked 32nd out of 32nd by PFF, and he's still producing. And this team needs playmakers, and he's just such a special athlete. I agree with you. Derrick Henry goes down. This guy is like a locked and loaded top 12 weekly start, in my opinion.
Yeah, they kind of the phrase ticking time bomb was used to describe his knee. And I saw someone on Twitter today say he runs like he knows his knee is a ticking time bomb and he's got to get everything out of his career that he can right now. This guy runs hard, runs with a purpose. He's just good. I love watching Tajay Spears play. I wish he had ACLs.
Yeah, well, I think we both agree this is similar to Jai, who had an amazing career for his rookie contract and then never did anything. And that's probably like the best case. Like
I don't even know if I'd say it's the most likely because there have been guys with these knee issues that have played longer, but it's at least very much in play.
Yes, and the way he cuts is always going to make me a little worried. He plants his foot so hard to take some of those cuts, but I'm not worried about it in redraft. I'm not even worried about it in dynasty. Like, you just enjoy the ride for as long as you have the guy.
How does he do that with no ACL and the leg flex? How does he do that?
I don't understand. No, me neither. And if you go back and watch him at Tulane, obviously you and I are both big fans of him coming into the draft. And the only reason
the only reason I didn't take him with the 4th overall pick is because he has no ACLs.
Yeah, and that turns out not to matter.
It may matter in the long term.
Yeah, but I love the guy. He's probably the most electric rookie I like to watch. Bijan, obviously, but like Tajay Spears is right there.
Yep. And on that note, Dalton, that is going to do it for episode 121 of the Half Point Per Podcast. Give us a follow, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Half Point Per Pod. Subscribe to the YouTube, the link to all those things. As always, in the show notes, we will answer all the questions as they come in YouTube as well, just like every week. Thank you guys so much for listening. For those of you in our Dynasty League who have been waiting an hour and 9 minutes for this part, here we go. And we will start off, Dalton, with our power rankings. Who do you think, before I just give you mine, who do you think should be number one in the SFFL power ranks this week?
I feel like you just want me to point out that it should be you.
No, I'm not. I don't have myself number one, although I am number one in the standings, which is really what matters.
Okay. A little humble brag there.
I still have Ty. The Ty bots, hanging strong at number one. He's 3-2, but in all reality, he is a late Aaron Jones injury reminder away from being 4-1. He also has not had Saquon Barkley for multiple weeks, has hardly had Aaron Jones, and his team has still been putting up points. He would have scored 110 if he was able to put his bye weeks worked out in such a way where he would have played Zach Moss, this week, and he would have scored 120 points. So he's still my one. I think he has the deepest team. He has the most margin for error. He has all of his draft picks. If he wants to go get somebody, he can definitely do that as well. I've got Brian too. We talked about the Cooper Kupp travesty last week. Now he does lose Justin Jefferson, so his spot here is a little bit tenuous. I'm kind of siding on the fact that I don't think it's going to be for the year. If it is, that obviously changes things a lot. But Breece Hall coming on, Cooper Kupp. Obviously, we liked what we saw week 1. Finally, a Justin Fields game. We'll see if that continues. But I think you'd agree that Brian has a pretty stacked roster.
Yeah, and I mean he has Tajay Spears, who we just talked
Yeah.
about.
Yep.
So, yeah, he's definitely there. We'll see. He's never made the playoffs before, so we'll see how he does.
That's true. That's fair. I've got Troll, Bud Light, number 3 here. And, I mean, he's made quite the jump since the last time we did this. I think you had him on the outside looking in of your playoff hopefuls, not even playoff teams. And he has taken that, used it as motivation, and put up something like 350 points in the last 2 weeks. Like, just absurd. Christian McCaffrey, obviously absurd, but McCaffrey didn't even have the McCaffrey game last week because of
DJ Moore had the McCaffrey game.
Yes, DJ Moore had 45 points. I was about to say McCaffrey didn't need to because the Cowboys were the Cowboys the other night. But yeah, DJ Moore, he's got David Montgomery, who we've talked about. He's kind of rolling with Adam Thielen right now. Damian Pierce, Drake London. So, like, I like the team. He's got Joe Burrow. Maybe Joe Burrow's kind of back, maybe not. The worry here, though, is I feel a little bit worse about his depth, about his flex spots than those top 2. And, like, if the Thielen train kind of wears off, if Laporta kind of falls back a little bit, it could get a little dicier for his team, but he's definitely got a very nice looking roster right now.
Yeah, no, he's definitely in it. I mean, he has 10 total touchdowns in 2 weeks from 2 players in Montgomery and CMC. So it's there.
Yes. That's insane. All right. Number 4, I have myself. I mean, Jalen Hurts, the Eagles offense kind of finally found themselves fully last week. We'll hope that continues. I kind of had what has turned out to be a very typical fantasy football experience for me the last 3 years, where it's like my team has a great day, but it very clearly could have been better. James Conner gets hurt second quarter. He's out a month, so no Conner. Definitely hurts. But 4-1 with T. Higgins and Chris Olave, both hopefully big-time positive regression guys. No Amon-Ra last week either. So I'm feeling pretty solid. Could be a little bit better. I don't know if you want to add anything on my team, Dalton.
I mean, you're just going to keep taking injuries. It is the way things go.
That's true. That is the way things have gone in the SFFL for 3 years. When I thought Travis Kelce tore his Achilles for like 3 seconds, I thought about quitting fantasy football and just football in general, actually, for a quick second there.
It's not too late. You can trade me all your guys, but we can take that offline if we want to talk about that some other time.
Number 5, I have Noah. And, I want to say, but before I get a comment from Noah in the sleeper chat, 1 through 5, it's interchangeable. You can order it anyway. And he just came he just came at 5. It just kind of is what it is. 2 of his best 7 players are quarterbacks. Can't start them both. What can I say?
Yeah, he does get Eckler back, and he also gets Pacheco against the Broncos defense. So this will probably be a big shut your mouth week for Evan.
Well, he does play me this week, so yeah, he very well could beat me this week.
Oh, he plays you this week.
He plays me this week.
They also play the pass funnel defense in the Tennessee Titans. It could be a shootout in Melonheadville or Toledo, wherever we're playing this week.
All right, we'll go through these next couple a little bit quicker. So Trejo at 6, he's got the aforementioned Bijan Robinson. Better days probably ahead for him, and as a result, for Trejo's team, Trejo's kind of been one of those teams where he's left a little bit of meat on the bone. You feel like he should be scoring more points. Maybe that's just kind of par for the course for Trejo. It seems like Trejo kind of always has that, where it's like you think his team should be scoring more, or like in certain years his team does score and he just doesn't win those games. Like I need to see the Raccoons break through and actually make the playoffs before I call them a bona fide contender.
Yeah, they got to stop eating garbage and dine with the rest of us at the winners table.
Juan Pablo, number 7. Juan has weathered the Nick Chubb injury as best he can. Jahmyr Gibbs having the Jahmyr Gibbs issues is not helping things right now. But he's got a winnable matchup against Rowdy this week. I think both guys probably think that's a winnable matchup. Big one for Juan this week. Got to go out and get that win. Eli, number 8. I mentioned it a couple weeks ago.
Friend of the show.
Yes, friend of the show, Eli. Shout out Eli. That the loss to you was just a big deal, I think. And I still kind of think that. I will say I have Eli 8 and Law 9. Now, I'm not ready to say 100% as fact, but I think last week's matchup between Eli and J-Law may have been a loser leaves town. And Eli won that game 122-63. So I don't know.
I mean, I think, maybe both just leave town. I do own both their picks, so maybe it's a little more beneficial for me, but maybe we just throw in the towel, boys.
I've got Rowdy 10. He has not sold everybody, but he did sell Elijah Moore. Rowdy's team is filled with studs at the very top and not much else after that. So selling Elijah Moore is a bigger deal than it sounds on the surface. We'll see. Like if he loses the Juan this week, the tank should be on. The tank should maybe be on anyway, but if he loses the Juan this week, then maybe the tank will be on. We'll see what Rowdy does there. Brad 11, you 12. Like the tank is fully on for both of you.
I just made a couple of win now trades that aren't even being mentioned.
You do have Elijah Moore. You do have Jared Goff, but you did lose Anthony Richardson, so that's like still a net negative.
Jared Goff has not missed a quarter of football.
That is true.
Those are facts. And Elijah Moore might have a better quarterback in PJ Tucker this week. So positives all the way around.
All right. Anything else on the league? Your thoughts on the landscape before we get out of here?
That's all I have. I do see that comment in chat from Odie. 2 and 3, struggling with injuries. Would I trade Tyreek and James Cook for T. Kelsey and Ken Walker? The answer is yes. I would do that. You just get James Cook's touches have gone down every game. He's not a red zone back. He's not going to give you boom weeks. Kelsey and Ken Walker.
It's going to be game script dependent for him.
Yeah. Kelsey and Ken Walker, in my opinion, would have been a fair offer alone.
Yeah, and if you're struggling with injuries, you're adding depth, trading 2 for 3, and I think like I said, I agree with you. I would have done this at a 2 for 2.
Yeah, so definitely do that.
All right, thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you for indulging the Dynasty Talk as always at the end. If you do for some reason stick around for that or are interested in our league's current happenings, we will talk to you again next week.